Hey, Wandering Jews listeners, it's Jonathan Schwab, host of Jewish History Nerds with my friend and colleague Yael Steiner.
We are so excited to announce that we're back for our 4th season. Every week, we nerd out on a fascinating topic from Jewish history.
We're not historians, but we are fired up about learning. In Jewish History Nerds, we share our passion for Jewish history with each other and with you.
This season, we're focusing on symbols and objects, all with amazing stories and meaning. So join us for new episodes every Thursday. I promise you will learn something new.
Whoever said history was boring clearly never heard these stories. Subscribe to Jewish History Nerds wherever you get your podcasts and check out unpacked.media.
And so huge parts of Jerusalem and the environs have lost electricity. I am sitting here on a phone with one line of 4G connection. It might fall down to 3G. It might disconnect completely because my house is without electricity. So that's the story. Luckily, I have all this travel podcasting equipment. So I have a light on batteries and I have all this stuff. Yes.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Wandering Jews with Mijal and Noam. I'm Mijal.
And I'm Noam.
And this podcast is our way of trying to unpack big questions being asked by Jews and about Jews. We don't have it all figured out, but we are excited to try and figure some things out together. It's really about the process of wandering together, asking questions, and leaving episode feeling like we've all learned something new.
Listen, I say this every week. Mijal, you say this every week. We love hearing from you. So shoot us a note at Wandering Jews at unpacked.media. It's Wandering Jews at unpacked.media.
We do love hearing from you. So let's get into the topic of conversation today. So today is Yom Ha'atzmaut. Israel is celebrating its 77th birthday, which is really exciting. I've been celebrating Israel's birthday, Yom Ha'atzmaut, pretty much my entire life. But every Yom Ha'atzmaut is different. And last year's Yom Ha'atzmaut was the first one since October 7th. We are right now on the second Yom Ha'atzmaut, kind of like in the shadow of what some people call like the second founding of Israel, October 7th, 2023. And I'll just say as a framing before introducing our guest that I am excited to discuss with our guests and try to figure out how are we supposed to be feeling this Yom Ha'atzmaut? Like, yes, happy, but like there's different shades of happiness. What are we celebrating? How do we make sure that from America especially, we are approaching this day in the right way? And I'll just name in terms of context that this Yom Ha'atzmaut, we still have 59 hostages in Gaza. 24 of them are presumed alive. We've lost so many soldiers this last year. The war is still ongoing. There's like real questions around like leadership and cohesion inside Israeli society. And to top things off, Wednesday, April 30th, there was a massive fire that broke out in Israel, pretty much with the government declaring a national emergency, lots of Yom Ha'atzmaut ceremonies being canceled. So that's a little bit of just like the background that's on my mind. And Noam, when you and I were talking about Yom Ha'atzmaut, and we were like, who do we want to talk to? And we're like, Haviv. So we are so excited to have Haviv Rettig Gur back with us. There's so many ways to describe Haviv. Haviv is a journalist. I'm going to call you a historian at this point, Haviv. Also a podcaster who has an amazing podcast called, is it Ask Haviv Anything or Haviv Answers Everything?
No, it's Ask Haviv Anything. It's Ask Haviv Anything. It's really great. But Mijal, you stepped into something there when you called Haviv a historian. There's all this. I did
acknowledge. I said I'm going to call you a historian.
Okay, you're going to right exactly because there's all this chatter right now in the YouTube world about like who has the right to have expertise and describes themselves as historians versus educators. There's a whole Joe Rogan thing with Dave Smith versus Douglas Murray. I don't know if you saw it, but it was they
and Daryl Cooper.
Right. Yes, and Daryl Cooper, exactly.
And I'll just say to that, first of all, thank you very much. But what I am is a teacher. I'm a history teacher. And I think when I say that, people are like, oh, no, don't put yourself down like that. I'm like, no, that's the huge, amazing thing. Like, that's why you should all respect me. Like, teacher is hard. Teacher is taking a book written by a scholar who knows the 11 languages of the period and making an arc that's accessible, plus opening up the actual original story. That's what I do for a living.
You know Haviv, you know what's amazing, though? Don't call yourself a history teacher. Call yourself a podcaster. That's the noble... that's such a funny bit. Like
that's the fame and fortune nowadays.
But Haviv, let me just start by asking you, we are recording this when Yom Ha'atzmaut is about to start in Israel. Even though this is going to go live, this episode on Yom Ha'atzmaut on the 31st, May 1st. What's the date tomorrow? Sorry.
April 31st.
April 31st. This is going to be live on April 31st. Just describe to us, what does Yom Ha'atzmaut look like right now for you, for your family?
So first of all, Yom HaZikaron is the day before, is right now. We're recording on the...
By the way, can I make fun of myself? I have to make fun of myself. I'm sorry. There's no such thing as April 31st. It doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. It's May 1st. By the way, historian Noam Weissman.
Yeah.
Neither of you corrected me, by the way.
I was thinking to myself, that doesn't sound right. Oh, I must be confusing, June, July, and April.
There's a funny Parks and Recreations bit on this, but let me just say that part back. Okay.
That's great.
This is coming out on May 1st.
There you go.
On actually Yom Ha'atzmaut, we're recording this as Yom HaZikaron, Israel's Memorial Day, is ending in Israel. So, Haviv, just tell us, what are things like right now for you, for your family?
It's been, as they say, it's been a year, right? So we have good friends who died in the war. We have friends whose family were taken hostage, and most of them have come out. We still know by second degree people who are still in. And so it's a very big and dramatic and powerful Yom HaZikaron. And usually Yom HaZikaron in my life, I'm 44, most of the Yom HaZikaron in my life have been almost an effort to attach, an effort to remember, an effort to feel the gratitude for those people, the loss of those people, to hear the stories. My dad lost a lot of friends in the first day of the 73 war in the southern Golan. I grew up on his stories of that battle, but they're not I did not lose an army friend in war. And so it was about trying to attach. And the last two Yom HaZikaron, last year and this year, because I now have little kids, because there's so much attachment already there, because we know people, because it's a personal experience, it's been an effort to actually protect them and an effort to have all the ceremonies, teach them what needs to be taught, but also not just fall into it yourself. Be strong for the kids. So it's now a really dramatically different day. And the tradition in Israel, almost since the founding of the state, is that Yom HaZikaron just sort of bursts into this happiness of Yom Ha'atzmaut. And we're getting ready to do the bursting in a couple of hours, where you're sad and people are crying, and the news is full of memorial ceremonies and families and poems and songs. And last night, just literally one of our neighbors hosted singing at their house and remembering, and everybody who came had someone to remember. And we're going from that, not just sadness, but that sense of that was the sacrifice, that was the cost. What did that cost? What did that sacrifice buy us? Independence and strength, and the safest Jews have ever been in the history of Jews. And that's what we then will suddenly celebrate tonight. And there won't be fireworks because there's massive wildfires raging in the Jerusalem area.
Have you just remind all of us, like from what I'm reading, there's a national emergency being declared, crazy fires all around Jerusalem, and a lot of Yom Ha'atzmaut celebrations being canceled?
Yeah, there's a huge sandstorm, hot air that came, what we call a chamsin, that came, they start in the Sahara. There's just basically dust storms from the desert, and they hit once or twice a year, and the air is dry, and winds of up to 100 kilometers an hour are expected. They told everybody to, if you have anything on your roof, bolt it down. And that started fires in the Jerusalem hills, which are all wooded hills. And so huge parts of Jerusalem and the environs have lost electricity. I am sitting here on a phone with one line of 4G connection. It might fall down to 3G. It might disconnect completely because my house is without electricity. So that's the story. Luckily, I have all this travel podcasting equipment. So I have a light on batteries, and I have all this stuff. Yes, but that's the story. So yeah, there's the IDF is sent rescue teams, and everybody's braced for it, and every firefighting team in the country is coming, and they've canceled, at least in the Jerusalem area, most of the ceremonies, and which happened tonight. And they've also told families that are still going to visit in these hours the graves not to go to the cemeteries, because a lot of cemeteries are very close to, they're on the outskirts of cities, they're close to the wooded areas. By the way, we're getting offers of help, and help is already on the way from neighboring countries.
Wow.
Cyprus, Greece, not so much Lebanon, Egypt, but the Palestinian Authority firefighters are joining with the Israeli firefighters. Have already offered. Of course, when it comes to a wildfire, Israelis and Palestinians are both in the way, right? So they do join forces on that. Incidentally, a separate neighbor is hosting the drinking and singing and dancing into the night for all the families of the neighborhood party tonight. They're still on, and they said we'll be on with flashlights and candles. That's okay.
And maybe it's when the best of Israel comes out, when everybody has to just, I saw some Instagram clips already of Israelis being like, this too, we're going to triumph over. And kind of...
by the way, the light went out. My kids celebrated. They ran onto, we have a porch in our apartment, and the porch has a little, like a water pipe, and they turned on the water, and they started having a water party. And I was very annoyed because they left the door to the porch open, and there's a sandstorm outside. But once we got over that hurdle, the electricity going out is not a sad thing for kids. So,
what does annoyed Haviv sound like as a dad? I want to know what that tone is.
Very, very calm.
Okay.
I want to learn that from you, Haviv.
And then they respond.
I don't sound calm.
If I yell, my kids are deeply unimpressed by yelling. I've gone through yelling into calm. They've trained me.
Haviv, last year, I remember just, struggling on Yom Ha'atzmaut, trying to figure out how to celebrate. And there was an episode you did, I think it was with one of Times of Israel's podcasts, in which you spoke about different aspects of Israeli society that gave you the kind of, like, not naive, like Pollyannish, it's going to be okay, but like what I felt was like a sense of like real hope about what Israeli society has in terms of resilience and strength that will, God willing, lead us into, 77 more years. So I want to ask you right now, going into this 77th birthday, what do you see when you look at Israeli society, at the state of Israel, that gives you hope, optimism, cause for celebration, and a sense of we're here to stay, we're here to not just survive, but to flourish?
Basically everything that isn't social media. Every aspect of our lived life is either astonishingly good or not good, but fixable. And when I say social media, I mean these rhetorical, these political, these truly like social media algorithm kinds of mechanisms that drive us apart, that incentivize polarization and radicalization. That stuff makes everyone feel a sense of dissipation, of falling apart. It's been there for many years. And over the course of those many years, Israel has actually, in every substantive way we can measure, gotten stronger. And so I don't trust those mechanisms. I think we should look at them, we should know about them, we should think about them, and also we should be aware of these mechanisms and cleave to each other and hold on to each other and pull each other closer and respect each other more, because we have to compensate for all of these mechanisms of modern life that drive us apart. I don't think Israel is doing a great job. I think we're genuinely suffering, and we are succumbing often to our worst selves, but we're doing better than everyone in the world because we have an enemy, and an external enemy is not a bad thing for a society to hold us together. And because we have a history of refuge and of fleeing and of being refugees who built a country. So I am extremely optimistic that the deep fundamental things, the structural things, will carry us through.
So if you had to name the top three things that give you this like deep sense of optimism about the resilience and strength of Israel today on its birthday, what would you say it is?
So there had been a few incidents, really nasty incidents. A group of right-wing, basically racists, I mean, they're not basically racist, they screamed racist things, stormed a synagogue in Ra'anana last night at a Memorial Day ceremony of bereaved families, of the families of soldiers who had died, of terror victims who had died. That's a shared ceremony with Palestinians. They were screening the ceremony in that synagogue, and the parents of dead soldiers attended. Now, their politics are deep left, and they're unpopular views in Israel today. They're views shared by, depending on how you ask the question, 10 to 30% of the population, but it's the left-wing 10 to 30%. And these people who come from the right-wing 10%, the most right-wing 10%, decided to violently storm this ceremony. To me, that's horrifying. Are these people saying that a dead Hamas fighter and a dead IDF fighter are both human tragedies and we have to bridge that gap? Yes, they are. Does that bother me personally? Just lay it all bluntly out there, because Hamas are the genocidal ones and not the Israelis, not those IDF soldiers. Yes, it does bother me, and I think it's deeply naive, and I would join that ceremony. I would respect that ceremony because those people gave their children so that my children can live, but I'm not going to like the ceremony. Also, when the parent of a dead soldier has politics I don't like and wants to commemorate them any old way they want, that is holy writ. That is sacred, and I owe them far too much to express an opinion to them, and certainly to disrupt. And certainly, as they disrupt in the synagogue where they're having the ceremony, scream things like "your village will burn down" and "death to Arabs," which these right-wing racists, far-right racists, this is not, center right, were screaming. So that event depressed everyone I know. Again, most people don't share the politics of the ceremony. So what's the headline? Is the headline that the racists attacked bereaved parents of dead soldiers because they didn't like their ceremony? Or is the headline that all the rest of Israel saw that and responded by reasserting our unity? And my view is the latter. The latter is the fundamental. The latter is the representative.
Right.
And so that's my view. We sink or swim together, and everybody knows it. And there's data I saw today about military service. The Israeli political left, people who say I am a left-wing voter in polls, they serve in the army by 90%, 88% rates of service in the military. And the religious Zionists are right behind them on the deep right. And so everyone together has a shared fate. And that's the basic story.
There was a funny clip from Eretz Nehedar. We can put it in the show notes of this. It was like a joke, a comedy skit. But this soldier basically calling up groups of soldiers to go on a bus, to go deploy, and using all the names that like other people use for them. Like the crazy right-wingers, come on in. The left-wing who hate this, come on in. The Bivistim, come on. And like you see all these groups, the basic joke is that we're all going to make fun of each other with these names, but they're all getting on the same bus and going to fight for each other and with each other. So I'm hearing, Haviv, that your deep sense of optimism has to do with what you're arguing is a sense of absolute solidarity that the majority of Israelis have.
Yes. The Israelis I deeply don't like are willing to die for my children. It limits how much I can not like them. You know what I mean?
It's very telling of where Israeli society is. And it's basically, no matter where you stand politically, 90% of the country is there for each other. And that's very special. That's very, very special.
I was going back to like earlier pictures of Yom Ha'atzmaut in previous years. And many of them were like silly, like my kids eating bamba or something like that. And I was thinking that many of us, myself, like I would think about myself, like Yom Ha'atzmaut was this like falafel or bamba Zionism celebration, very light. And this year it feels different. I was thinking of Yom Kippur, Day of Atonement, how it can be like, it's the holiest day of the year. Yeah. It also can be like the happiest, more joyful day, like Purim. It's like a certain joy that has gravitas to it. And Haviv, just hearing you talk about it right now, that's a little bit what I'm hearing. Like a celebration that follows Yom HaZikaron is one that is imbued with a joy that is based on the morning of the day before.
Yeah, that's very true. And I was asking my daughter on the way to school today, I was driving my kids to school, you could send the trophy to my home address. But in the car, we put on some sad, morose, somber music. And I said, is Yom HaZikaron, when you think of Yom HaZikaron, she's 9, is it a very sad day? And she said, it's sad, yes, but it's a day. She said Yom HaZikaron means a day to remember. And I don't think it's so sad because I'm remembering people who did a lot for the Jewish people. And so I think it's a day of saying thanks, of acknowledgement. So that's one of the powers of Yom HaZikaron to Yom Ha'atzmaut. It's not just sadness. It's not just somber. It's also a day of acknowledgement that leads to what you said earlier, Haviv, what the Jewish people have, which is a Jewish state with what comes with all the craziness, all the wonderful things. But if you don't acknowledge it, then you don't actually feel the joy. And Mijal, I hear what you're saying, though, about the joy. There's a serious joy. There's a gravitas to that joy. But I also like the idea that my friend Gail Troy has, that he says every Yom Ha'atzmaut morning, you should make sure that your kids for breakfast have ice cream. That's his shtick. It's like you have ice cream for breakfast on Yom Ha'atzmaut. It should just be a day of total joy. Different in the last couple of years, but that sort of thing. But I want to play a few games, guys. I'm playing a few games now. So, Haviv, I got games for you. You ready for games?
I am never not ready for. Okay,
here we go. You're ready. You're ready. So the game number 1 is called overstatement, understatement. And I'm going to say a few lines to you. I just want to hear your thoughts. Is this an overstatement or an understatement? And so people tend to be in one of two places. Either we overstate things or we understate things. So I'm going to say a few examples, and I'm going to get your take and maybe Michal's take also. Okay, ready? Here's statement number one. Statement number one is overstatement or understatement. Number one, Hezbollah is no longer a threat.
Overstatement.
Why?
I was not told there would be follow-up questions.
Right, no, I mean, we why or just over under and that's it.
They're still dug in Lebanon, and Iran is working very hard to rebuild their mobilizability.
Done. Number two, Iran is on the brink of collapse. Overstatement or understatement?
Probably overstatement. So many data points point to collapse, but the one thing that this regime knows how to do is survive, even as the country sinks. So Iran's economy is in shatters, and their society is broken, and drug use is exploding, and violence, and it's the world leader in executions, and there's a massive water shortage, and corn crops are failing. I mean, it's a country truly in collapse, and this regime does nothing but survives. So probably overstatement.
And I've seen a lot of female hair recently in Iran. Just saying.
Which is definitely a sign of collapse.
The most scary thing of all, women's hair. Wow.
Okay, yeah, okay. By the way, next episode, what is the scariest thing of all? Women's hair by Mijal Bitton. Okay, great, amazing. Okay. Number three in geopolitics, and then I'm gonna get it to a little bit of a lighter place. Hamas is no longer capable of staging another October 7th. Overstatement or understatement?
Absolutely correct. Even understatement. Not only that, Hamas is no longer capable of leading Gaza out of its current situation. Gaza can't be rebuilt with Hamas in place. Even if you hate Israel, even if there's nowhere to send the money, there's nowhere to send the concrete. So Hamas has now trapped Gaza in its own strategy of Gaza's destruction on the altar of destroying Israel. Gaza is now trapped, and Hamas cannot carry out another October 7th. Hamas cannot even rebuild.
Okay, I got a good one for you. I got a really good one for you. We saw the protests in Gaza. And, our mutual friend Ahmed Foud Al-Khatib has been writing extensively about how there are protest movements against Hamas. Do you think that overstatement or understatement, the Palestinians in Gaza are finally ready for an alternative to Hamas?
I think the Palestinians were always ready for an alternative to Hamas.
So overstatement or understatement?
They're ready. Even by the way, that's not the same as they hate Hamas, are ashamed of October 7. Many of them both hate Hamas, are proud of October 7, would do October 7 again, and want someone else other than Hamas. All at the same time, because complex people have complex views, and all people are complex. So, yes, they're ready for someone else. That's an understatement. They're massively ready for someone else, and they understand that there's no future under Hamas.
Okay. Now to lighter. Here we go. And Mijal, you gotta jump in for these non-geopolitical ones. Okay.
I take a step back.
No.
The only thing I know is geopolitics.
It's going to be Haviv and Mijal. By the way, this is
going to be some history.
Neither of you have come to my house ever for Shabbat dinner yet.
No, you haven't invited me. You probably invited Haviv, and you thought you invited me also.
He hasn't.
He hasn't. Okay.
All right. Well,
Haviv, I think I invited you. You were in New York once.
By the way, I've been there when Mijal's invited you.
I actually was like, Haviv, you're in town. You want to come over? I think so. Right?
He said. Did he ghost you?
I don't remember what happened, but I would have come if I could.
Plans.
He had alternative plans. Did he wait for better plans? That's a move, by the way.
You know what? I'm going to go back to my WhatsApp messages, see how much time passed.
Okay.
You know what? After this, I'm going to message you the next 3 times I'm in New York, and I will be there.
We actually had great coffee hangouts when you're in New York.
Yes, we met for coffee. She had time for me for coffee, Noam.
Oh my.
Yeah.
Well,
also in some other state we met for. I forgot what.
You guys are meeting for conference in different states. Okay, here we go. Next one: overstatement, understatement. Israelis are still the happiest people on earth, at least top 10.
Understatement.
Wow. You think they should? You think they should be? They should be competing with Finland at number 1. You think? Wow.
Israelis are close to Finland on those, where the methodology includes all kinds of things where Finland is way ahead of us, which you wouldn't naturally think of, like welfare, like trust in government, social cohesion. In social cohesion, the Israelis are way ahead, and in other things, the Finns are way ahead. I think that the things that the Israelis are way ahead on, which is not GDP per capita, it's not wealth, it's not, are the more important things. I think Israelis are more specifically happy in their specific lives, whereas Norwegians and Finns and generally the Scandinavians are pretty happy, but also have all these other social strengths and welfare states and things like that. So I think the Israelis are happier than people know. I don't think those rankings are perfect. I think within 10 slots, it's correct of any country, right? But the Israelis are incredibly happy people, and they're happy in deep adversity because that has nothing to do with your happiness. Your happiness is how much backup you have in life, who you have in life, whether you can rely on family and friends and community. And most of the West is lonely in that regard, and the Israelis are Middle Eastern in that regard.
It's funny. I think part of the answer to this question almost redefines the way we think about happiness. In the West, I think we have a really shallow understanding of what happiness looks like. There's this study I always think about when this question comes up. It was, I forgot the exact name, but we can find it and put it in the show notes. It was a longitudinal study done at Harvard following a group of men for decades and decades, in which you've had researchers who really met them, interviewed them, did surveys on them pretty much every single year to check up on their well-being and their happiness. And I read this whole book that was like a report on the study. And the researcher almost apologetically says something like, we spent all this money, we did all this research, basically to prove that human relationships and a sense of being part of something greater than you and having support to your life, that is the secret to happiness and well-being. Like, he was almost apologizing that this massive research comes back to this foundational basic. And I think Israel in this way exemplifies this in a way that is hard to recreate outside of Israel, with some exceptions. I'm sitting here, in the heart of the Syrian Sephardic community in Brooklyn, but we can talk about, I know you both, Haviv, you visited us. But I think
amazing community.
That's the secret to happiness.
I love it. I also think so. Mijal, so you're saying it's even an understatement. Okay, overstatement or understatement? American Jews and Israeli Jews will grow closer to each other.
Understatement. There's a story in the Times of Israel today about a survey conducted by the federations in America. 79% of Jewish respondents are deeply concerned with rising anti-Semitism. 73% have a desire to learn more about Israel and general Jewish knowledge. There's a sense that they don't know and don't understand, and this is significant now in their lives. And 31% say that they have they're more engaged in Jewish life than before October 7, and we are 19 months out. This was, we saw this huge 43% surge in showing up by the way, on campus. There's studies on campus that say that from 15% of Jewish college students going to Jewish organizations on left, on right, whether, I don't know what, Hillel, Chabad, Aish, all the different Jewish student groups on campus. It used to be 15% of Jewish students took part, and then it went up to 40 after October 7. And that happened to all Jews. It went up to 43. There was a 43% who said, I have done more Jewish because after October 7, because of a sense of solidarity with Jews. That's sustained 19 months later at a third of all Jews. So there's a huge turning to Jewishness and desire to learn more in Israel. And I experienced this, and you experienced this. Our business is teaching Jews their story. And we've had a run on our product, a run on our doors. So absolutely, there's a closer connection.
No, how does this compare? I'm thinking to the 6-Day War and its effect on American Jews. Stronger, or I'm not framing the question well.
Similar or dissimilar, right?
Yeah, sure. Go for it.
Similar.
Okay. No, you passed the test.
I passed it. It is similar. It's very similar. You're seeing, this is anecdotal a bit, but I have a number of friends who are choosing, this is so strange, who are just take yourself out from being Jewish, being American, being Israeli for a second, who are choosing to move to an area of land that is war-torn, that in the news everyone thinks is the scariest place to go, that in the news, when I tell people who are not part of the Jewish world, I'm going to Israel, everyone just says, stay safe, I hope you're okay, let me know when you get there, let me know when you're back. And they're choosing to move to Israel and from very, very comfortable places. And that's happening. That's happening right now.
Yeah. I'll say Noam, I'll give a shout out. My baby sister got engaged. And on Sunday we had a l'chaim. Thank you. We had a l'chaim on Rosh Chodesh Iyar. And Mabruk, thank you.
Mabruk,
but she's
Syrian Jews.
Yeah, she's marrying a lovely, actually Ashkenazi, lovely young man from Canada. And they both decided to make Aliyah. And he
Amazing.
did the army, and and they both gave speeches at the L'chaim speaking about how meaningful it is for them to build a home together in Israel.
Yeah, this
and
is
that's
happening.
kind of like how they found each other, because they both were like, we were moving from America and from Canada to Israel, building a home here. And I found that so beautiful, and I'm really proud of them.
Meaning. It's because of the pursuit of meaning. And like I was going to say this earlier about the question of overstatement, understatement about Israelis are still the happiest people on earth. You were both talking about the difference between happiness in the West and in the Middle East. In the West, we talk about the pursuit of happiness very often. And in Israel, there's the pursuit of service, which leads to happiness. It's not that there's a pursuit of happiness. There's a pursuit of service. My uncle is 57 years old. Okay. He's got 5 kids, married to my aunt. Okay. He just joined the reserves. He's 57 years old, and he is going back and forth in Gaza to help the Israeli people. His name is Amram Hachsin, and it's just unbelievable what he's choosing to do with his time and with his life. And that is not, he's not trying to be happy. He is trying to serve. And that leads to joy. That leads to something positive in your life.
Beautiful.
I want to throw that out there.
There wasn't a single service organization, whether it's military, civilian, medical NGOs, that didn't have to turn people away who were trying to volunteer. Not just after October 7th, but for a very, very long time.
It's a long time later. Okay, fine. There's a lot more to talk about here. But should we play? There's another game. But Mijal, I don't know if you want to lead this game or not. Mount Rushmore.
I can lead it as like our final Yom Ha'atzmaut game. Am I pronouncing it right? Mount Rushmore. How would you say it as an American?
Mount Rushmore.
Mount Rushmore. So I think often if we were to ask people who's in the Mount Rushmore of Israeli history, they would go for like the typical politicians, the founders, whether it's like Herzl, whether it's Ben Gurion, Golda Meir, etc. I wanted to ask the both of you, if you had to think of a Mount Rushmore, there wouldn't be like the typical politicians or like super well-known historical figures, but they can be cultural figures, singers, rabbis, artists, volunteers. I don't know. Who would you include in your Mount Rushmore?
By the way, I got to give a shout out to my Rebbe, Bill Simmons, who is a podcaster who loves just like thinking about sports and pop culture through the lens of just these categories. But so Mount Rushmore, like, who's your Mount Rushmore? Who is on our Mount Rushmore of Israeli history? You go. You know what? Let's go back and forth. We got 4. We have to fill it in. You get first pick.
Me. And we're not doing David Ben Gurion.
We could do David Ben Gurion, Theodore Herzl, Menachem Begin.
Menachem Begin, right. So we're not doing those. So just to clarify, second level of obviously deeply influential. Mine would be Rav Ovadia Yosef.
Wow.
I was actually, by the way, that was like top of my list, Haviv.
Okay, wow.
Just saying.
That's great.
You're like taking my role. I'm the token Sephardi person.
Well, I'm opening up you now don't have to represent Sephardi. You could just go anywhere.
What a pick. That's a great pick right there.
He comes from Iraq. He was a very important figure in the Jewish community of Egypt. And then he makes Aliyah. And he becomes, because he is an actual genius, a religious genius, and also, I mean, his photographic memory. I mean, when you read one of his religious decisions, he brings, 35 poskim, decisors of Jewish law in the Jewish legal bookshelf.
Before ChatGPT and before any kind of software.
Before ChatGPT, it was just literally, he was a walking ChatGPT of this unbelievably complex bookshelf, and he was also a social and political genius, and he actually built out essentially not just the political world of Sephardi Judaism in Israel, but the spiritual world as well. And he unified. Some people don't like him for this. Syrian Jews who don't think they're like Egyptian Jews don't like the fact that Egyptian and Syrian kind of merged into this sort of Sephardi under Ovadiah's influence. But he turned them into a real political force with a political consciousness that managed to beat back some of the Ashkenazi elites and claim their rightful place in Israeli society as well.
Wow.
So even though I disagree with nearly every political statement he ever said,
all of them?
His influence is so much. Although, no, I mean, he was actually quite moderate on many things.
I want to add something though, not just the political identity, but I think Rav Ovadia is partially to his credit, the fact that we still have a certain like the Masotiyut, the traditionalism, the sense that people who aren't observants can, in Israel, especially Middle Eastern Jews, can still claim God and community. I think a lot of that is because of the pride that he gave for the kind of like Mizrahi, Middle Eastern, like religious Sephardic expression. So a lot of the way that the country today is very religious, even when not all of it is observant, which I think is a good thing. I'm just going to name it here. A lot of that is to his credit.
I just asked ChatGPT right now, who is the most important and influential Israeli that most Americans don't know about? And the first answer was Chacham Avad Yosef.
I think
Haviv,
you just Haviv gave that answer.
That's pretty cool.
Okay, Noam, who's in yours?
He's enormous. He's enormously important. Yeah.
Wow. I'm going to give an answer that's going to bother Haviv so much with my number 2 pick. You ready for this? Micha Yosef Berdichevsky.
Do you want to tell the rest of us who that is?
Just to
Noam?
listeners or viewers, this is a callback to a previous episode where we disagreed on something. So that's what's going on.
Yeah. So, but
he's a noble pick. I'm not upset.
Okay, when I think of Israeliness, I think of Israeliness as like a term. I think of Micha Yosef Berdichevsky, meaning what Berdichevsky was. He was an author, he was a writer, he was a rabble-rouser. He studied in the Volozhin yeshiva with Rav Kook, and he was known as like the prodigy of that yeshiva. He was brilliant. I think he wore like tefillin all day at some point. I think that's part of what his jam was. Then he became radically secular, like super secular, to the point that he basically argued that there should be a break from Jewishness into a new identity called Israeliness, basically. And when I think of a lot of what I see in Israel as culturally, certainly for a time period, was this deep new identity of Israeliness. You could see it in Tel Aviv. You could see it in different parts of Israeli society, where there was a break, a departure from the Jewishness of old, and there was this new identity of being Israeli, which came with culture, which came with music, which came with art, which came with literature. And so I'm, again, like you with Chacham Avad Yosef, that you disagree with a lot of things he said. When I look at society in Israel, I'm like, a lot of Israeli society has been shaped by that worldview, regardless of whether or not they are aware that they've been shaped by that worldview, of this almost disdain often for the old country, for the Yiddish, for the what used to be Judaism. And it's like this idea that he said, I don't remember if he said it or someone else. No, it was Chaim Hazaz, I think, who said, you can become a Zionist when you're no longer Jewish, meaning like you could become.
It's like the opposite of Ravadia, by the way, Noam. You brought like the total.
Okay.
wait. So both of you just gave one. Let's do 2 more. So 1 more each of you.
Yeah.
Who's going to be Mount? And I'm going to challenge you to see if it, is it only going to be 4 men? You know.
Can I say one thing in defense of Berdichevsky?
Go for it.
Oh wow!
Because I really dissed him last time, but also he was, just so people know, it wasn't just a yuck Judaism, we should have Zionism instead. It was the old ways of living and thinking are not going to save us, are not going to help us in this new time with these new empires, these new ideas and ideologies, the pogroms, and so we need to retool at the scale of post-temple. I mean, at the scale of the building out of Talmudic Judaism is what he was arguing. So I just want to clarify, like it wasn't that religion, yuck. It was, we don't have the tools and we need to build them. We need to rethink who we are again. So
we got 2.
He's legitimate.
Mijal, that was so unfair of you, because I know that, I'll tell you why, because Haviv's third, I just know, I see it in his eyes right now. He was going to have a woman. He was like a very
I'm
prominent.
Just asking.
I'm telling you, a very prominent
Well,
woman.
now I have to have a woman. Hold on.
Actually, no, you go first.
I see what you did there. I actually do have a woman, in all seriousness.
Yeah, but you shouldn't be proud of that. A binder full of women.
Well, you prompted it. I was planning to have a woman.
You stepped into it.
I was actually going to get the cat out of our conversation, but just reminding you guys. Just kidding.
Okay.
We don't do it.
But,
that would be very unethical.
No, but I get picks. So when you get pick 1, I get picks 2 and 3. That's how this works in general.
Okay.
I lost the game. Just keep going. Yeah.
And then you get pick number 4. So for me, number it's actually an easy one. It's actually not hard at all. It's Naomi Shemer.
Oh my gosh, I had that one too in my list that I'm not sharing.
Not hard. not hard because
Noam, why do you have Naomi Shemer? And who was she?
Because she composed Israel's second national anthem, which probably should be its first national anthem. By the way, that's a fun
which
game
you're
of
talking
debate.
about Yerushalayim Shel Zahav.
Yerushalayim Shel Zahav, and Jerusalem of Gold. It's something that blended all different aspects of. It's very different than Berdichevsky. It blended the biblical aspect of Judaism. It blended modern aspects of Judaism, the national aspects, the religious aspects. And she was a songwriter in lots of different areas. But this song specifically took over the Jewish world, like beyond. When you think of Israeli music, yes, there's also a lot of we will have many episodes about the impact of Mizrahi music on Israeli society and on the Jewish world. But Naomi Shemer, the Yerushalayim Shel Zahav, Jerusalem of Gold, and her other music, very, very, very influential in Israeli society. She is my number 3 pick. I have her on my Mount Rushmore.
Can I just add something to that, Noam? There was a phrase from one of her songs that I wasn't familiar with, but it's become, I've seen it in many Yom HaZikaron posts, actually, and memorials, and also in many, like in some graves of Chayalim. It's a song called Shiro Shel Abba, which means song of, of father, daddy.
Yeah.
And the phrase that's come up before, that's I'm seeing a lot is, Lo lashav achi chatzavta lebinyan chadash, which I'm going to try to translate on the spot. It was not for nothing, my brother, that you chiseled, you
Quarried.
You quarried stones for like
a stone out of the quarry
for a new building. Kimina avanim ha'ele yibane mikdash, because from these stones a temple will be built. And I've just seen it resonate with so many people who basically like almost like a call for them to fallen soldiers to tell them all of this wasn't for nothing. Your sacrifice, your work, your heroism, these are going to be the stones, like going back to Psalms. The phrase from David, the bottom stone will be used with top stone, with a cornerstone, sorry.
Evan Masu Abonim Haital Rosh Binah.
Yeah, so from a stone that the builders didn't want will become the cornerstone. So from these stones, the Mikdash, the temple will be built. So I found that incredibly powerful this Yom HaZikaron to see her music continue to resonate.
That's amazing. I'm going to get that verse, by the way, behind me in my office. I love that verse. I love it. I love it. All right, Haviv, you get pick number 4 because Michal's not playing.
Last one.
Okay, well, so the last one is the hardest one, obviously. And there's so many.
We did all the Mizrahim and women, so now you can.
Michal's getting in there today.
I'm sorry.
There's
Continue,
a lot of. I'm Israeli. You guys do these culture wars. I'm good. There's so many, and there's so many people, writers and rabbis and spiritual leaders of various kinds who created new consciousnesses. The people who took Hebrew and turned it into something that you could do anything with. Shaya Gnons and the Amos Ozes and all of that. So those could be, but none of them, I think.
Now I'm getting nervous. Who this name is?
But exciting. I want to fall back on the boring and the expected and the geopolitical, and I want Yigal Allon.
Really?
Yigal Allon was, I think, 28 when he was appointed a general in the 1948 war. He was the single most successful general of that war. He did more than anybody to hold off the Egyptian army, maybe the strongest army in that war outside of the British-led Jordanian Legion. And he was everything that Israel is. It was just reified. He was took unbelievable initiative, unbelievable personal courage. He led his forces into the Sinai to circle the Egyptian position, and Ben Gurion had to 6 times, something like that, tell him to come back. But he did actually get the job done and protect the state and give it that southern border. And in many other places, he was an incredibly thoughtful, brilliant commander. He also, 3 weeks after the 6-Day War, came to the Israeli cabinet and said, well, we're not going to rule these people, and presented the first version of the Allon plan, which is, how do you build out a Palestinian state while holding a defensive perimeter at the Jordan Valley? How do you create a Palestinian state, which he argued has to be a full-fledged state in every way, while, not shrinking to 9 miles wide? All of the complexities that, this would have been 67, all of the complexities that more than half a century later, everyone keeps raising as if it's a brand new problem that they just discovered. he worked through a dozen times. There were a dozen alone plans, very different ones. One is in kind of confederation with the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan. One was a separate state. There were all these different options and ideas, but he was never not thinking deeply, seriously, and creatively. So he was both that great victor and conqueror and defeater of Israel's enemies, and also this deep thinker on how we actually solve big problems. And also, he was Palemas. He was Mapam. He was deep communist Zionism. And nevertheless, in the 60s, or even in the 40s, as he is deep communist, he's pro-Western and pro-English and pro-American. And in the 60s, he's starting to wonder if maybe, given the fact that the American economy was not collapsing, communism might have gotten something wrong about capitalism. And so he's a man who was not wedded to, he had ideals, and reality always mattered more. And he delivered the kinds of success. He is one or two of those founding generations without their culture, without their sense of self, without their willingness to sacrifice, their initiative, their unbelievable strengths, there wouldn't be an Israel.
Beautiful.
Love this is so our Mount Rushmore: Chacham Avad Yosef, Micha Yosef Berdichevsky, Naomi Shemer, and Yigal Alon. That's a fun Mount. I would take those four. If you play 4-4 them against a few others, I mean, that's a good team we got there. That's a good team. That's a great team.
They could take on anybody. Also in basketball, by the way.
I could just see Rabbi Vadia, bouncing around.
I'm trying to imagine.
He was young once. I don't remember him as young, but he was young.
I bet you Rabbi Yosef was actually amazing at basketball.
He was actually, we know what he was famous for? Okay, it's like off topic, but, and a lot of my relatives were close to him. They would visit him. My parents would go to his Motzei Shabbat Saturday night classes on dates. That was like their date night. But he was famous for actually giving
I feel like I just learned so much about Mijal.
He would give really strong slaps to people at the end of the... Do you know this?
No.
Like you would go and he would... Okay, this is like hard to explain over audio, but he would give like a bracha at the end, and then he would be like...
Slap you in the face?
Yes.
Out of love?
Yes, it was. So I'm just saying he had physical prowess, and he could have played basketball.
Noted.
Because he was known. But I think I'll just want to say happy birthday, Israel. You're 77 years young. I was in my. I feel like it's hard to use words about. I'll just speak for me, how much I love Israel and how grateful I am that it exists, and grateful to God that we have it, and so much humility in light of Israelis who have given so much for it to exist, and really a sense that we need to celebrate, that we should celebrate, be grateful, and be confident that if we manage to really take all of the amazing things that make Israel society, the society that it is, caring for each other, social solidarity, that God willing, in 77 years from now, our descendants will celebrate again and again and again. So wishing a very happy birthday to Israel.
Amen.
Yeah, and with that, can I wrap up? Should I read and it's been beautiful, Haviv, having you with us. Thank you so much. So awesome, and thank you for coming with like the Chamsin, the heat wave around you, and low electricity and all that. So appreciate you. Thank you so much for joining us. And I just want to remind all of our amazing listeners that Haviv has a podcast, Ask Haviv Anything. It is wide-ranging, all different topics, really interesting. Every time I listen to it, Haviv, I walk away like learning so many new things and thinking differently about new subjects. So listen to Haviv's podcast and continue to join us here on Wandering Jews. Wandering Jews with Mijal and Noam is a production of Unpacked, an open door media brand. Subscribe wherever you're listening to this pod and follow Unpacked on all the regular social media channels. We now have our Wandering Jews channel. Is it a channel? Account, sorry, on Instagram. So follow us there as well. And just on Instagram, also search for Unpacked Media.
Love it. And if you really enjoy Wondering with us, make sure to share this. Share the episodes out with your friends. We try to have a good time while thinking, while exploring, while wondering. And so just shoot us a note at wonderingjews@unpacked.media. That's wonderingjews@unpacked.media, not wandering Jews. This episode was hosted by Mijal Bitton and also me, Noam Weissman, and our very, very special friend and guest, as always, Haviv Rettig Gur. And find him at Ask Haviv Anything. This show was produced by Michael Weber and Rifki Stern, and our audio editor is Rob Pera. Thanks so much.